Right here. Here you go, let's play it.
Your work, what are you doing that's actually
on Seattle Community Media, and it will be on archive.org. So it will be on two public interest issues.
Note before we start, we planned and committed to this press conference.
So much for coming on the show this evening. Thanks, Marty. I totally appreciate you tremendously. And thank you for giving me the opportunity to be on your show. And thank you for the PPJ Gazette blog that you did on the Dorothy Vega issue, too. You know, I'm working on 3 different books from Seattle Detective and major cases to one all the way to the screen.
So that is my movies. You can find it on Seattle Community Media, archive.org, and now on YouTube.
To find an idea, because the film was a little bit tough to dig into, and
her small audience. So let's see. Minute Movies is, we meet monthly at Seattle Film Institute, and every month we have a different theme. And this year at STIFF, there used to be a film challenge as part of STIFF a while back, and I haven't done it for a while, and so Tim asked if we would run the film challenge for the festival. And we did, and the theme was media, and we're going to watch a bunch of different people's interpretations of what media means.
Way to select the theme every month, and we have a minute movie ball that we normally select, but for the special STIP edition, we made the amazing spinning wheel of transmedia minute movie that you'll see in this first film.
Yeah.
When we select
Film is a man on the street interviews and asks people what comes to mind when you hear the word media, or whatever the theme is for the month.
Or we're just gonna...
Yeah. Is that because the filmmakers aren't? So. Yes.
And what's yours? Is it? Are they all just called medium? Media?
No, mine's mixed media. It's the last one. The theme for this week for the special Minute Movie edition at STIFF. Media.
Any thoughts? Well, I had different thoughts about it when I went into it, but I was thinking, you know, just the barrage of media and like kind of a
Here you go, let's play it.
documentary here at STIFF in 2011. Empire over here somewhere. Smaller scale. Your work, what are you...
Community Media, so it will be on 3 different...
Note before we start,
So much for coming on the show this evening. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to be on your show. And you know, I'm working on 3 different detective agency who has worked on some major cases to
Seattle Minute. You can find it on Seattle Community Media, archive.org, and now on YouTube. And these are the ballots for these minute movies. So, tell me about the Seattle Minute Movies.
Okay, so Seattle Minute Movies is a monthly group for filmmakers that every month there's a different theme, and local filmmakers make a movie that's about a minute long on whatever their interpretation of that theme is. And then we screen the films at Seattle Film Institute on the 3rd Sunday of every month.
Well, thank you for doing this at STIFF. It's just so wonderful.
Yeah, and so with STIFF, yeah, it was great to have this opportunity to be part of their festival.
And we have it right here.
Yeah.
Grand illusion.
Here's our poster.
Wow.
Do it. Come on. Then I can take my glasses off. Is that what you're saying? This is our 11th year being an independent film festival, and this year taking it to a new level with digital media projects over at our gallery. Unfortunately, we closed our gallery at 4 today, so you won't get a chance to see those, but we still have all our projects online and just some really cool things. And you guys are all here to see these great films. We have all our filmmakers here, and we're going to do a Q&A after the last movie. So just be patient with us and stay tuned. And I really appreciate this sold-out crowd. This is awesome. So give yourselves a hand.
We had a short film, Tears of the Fallen, right? Where's our filmmakers there? Debbie? You know, just kind of had this conversation last night. Yeah, we were able to show this film twice, so it was fun. So let's just kind of start with telling us how you got connected with the director.
Okay, so the director of this film, his name is Roger van Beek Kakuin, and he's Dutch. And he would have loved to be here, but he's filming right now in Madrid, and he's also doing some pre-production stuff for our next film, which will be filmed in Spain. It's a short feature called Siesta. But I also wanted to, before I talk a little bit more about that, I wanted to introduce someone. I have a person who's kind of acted as my literary assistant, and she's got her degree in creative writing, and she's going to go to Sarah Lawrence and pursue a master's. But I know I wanted to introduce her because she might be back with her own film.
Great.
Yeah.
Was this the first kind of writing project you've been involved in that was turned into a film?
This is the first, because I've done travel writing, and I have written a lot about this story, and I'm working on a novel that's loosely based on the character of Renee, but there's a story in this book that just came out. You can find it in bookstores. I have a couple copies up here, but it's a longer story about the making of the film, because you just kind of see in this the tip of the iceberg as far as the stories that go with every single member of the crew. Renee collected all of the stories. You heard a little bit about what happened to one of the men who died, but he collected all of the stories of the 10 crew members and brought back these 2 survivors, but he also brought back the family members of the fallen soldiers. And there are plaques all over Paris for each of them, and so we just premiered it actually in Paris, which was really fun because they knew all the neighborhoods and all the areas, and so they could go see the plaques for the American Victory in Europe Day. And quite often we were, during the filming and during my communications with him, Renee said, I wouldn't have made it another winter. And he's probably right, because the conditions in Paris at the end of the war were that they had no meat coming in. They had no meat coming in for almost a year. And kids weren't growing. They were snatching men. The Germans were snatching Frenchmen off the street and putting them on trains to go work in Germany. So a lot of men just disappeared and were never heard from. And actually Renee's father disappeared for 3 days. And he was actually taken, put on a train, and he jumped off the train and kind of made his way back to the neighborhood. Something
Cool. You guys have some questions?
The film, was that actually their plane, or that was a different archival footage? The archival of the plane.
He just got archival footage. I don't know where he got that. The other footage of the liberation he got from the French government.
Good job promoting your screening and getting everybody out. It's such a nice day.
Thank you all.
Like living here in Seattle and something going on in a strange foreign country kind of thing.
Well, I was in grad school at UW in architecture, and I got a fellowship to study the architecture of Christiania in 2005. So I went there for 5 months and studied it, and Robert was in the documentary film program at the same time, and moved to Copenhagen, and I showed him around, and we got the idea for making the film then.
A foreign country, and that was the idea. And we achieved it, yeah.
Yeah, cool. Do you guys have some questions?
Things gone there as of late? You kind of left hanging as to what?
Just there in March, beginning of March, and we had a screening of the film there. And they didn't raise enough money, but they're still working on it. They're in an interesting situation because they'll never be forced out. Even if they had decided, we're not going to do this deal with you, we're not going to purchase the land, we don't want to, they would still be there because it's just too entrenched. But they're operating more or less the same as they were before, it felt like to me.
So there's building construction.
That's a big difference.
There were a couple new houses built and some additions and some new paving and stuff happening. So there seemed to be a little more energy than there was before, you know, because, yeah. If you want to read it. Or I could send you a PDF. But basically I was studying, what I was trying to understand is, how does this work in this society, which is basically anarchistic? And so, you know, building codes are not enforced. You can't get a loan. You know, there are all these weird conditions that you don't normally have, but they're right in the middle of this major city. So I was trying to understand the entire system, what's called building culture, as part of the system. And I'd say it's very complex, but the foundation of it is the fact that they don't own that property. And the fact that they don't own that property means that nobody can ever really own their house, and you can't get a loan. So those things start to create a sort of a situation where, for example, you have to build things very incrementally because you only have a little money at a time. And so that affects the aesthetics of things. It also affects the mistakes. Like, you know, in our society, we could build something massive that costs billions of dollars, like a tunnel through the middle of the city. That could be a complete and utter disaster, right? But the scale of it is such that it goes on like a juggernaut. That doesn't happen there because you build, you're gonna put out a window, right? And if you made a mistake, well, you can fix it. It's not a big deal. So I mean, that's just the tip of the iceberg.
Talk about that.
Yeah. There wasn't really any way for them to pay it. It all came in through a Central Place because it was a military base. And at one point, the government tried to shut it down, but the court said that was not allowed. So eventually, they worked out a deal where they started paying the utilities for these, and over time, they've made it better. They started metering things. So it's gotten better over the years, and now they're pretty much paying what they're supposed to be paying.
But that isn't
a lot of it they built.
A lot of it they built. I mean, they would have used some existing plumbing, but probably not wiring.
Yeah, most of the buildings didn't have working plumbing or sewer systems. They were the first community in Europe to have community-wide internet. So they built that themselves.
You know, there's so many different stories about what that means. First of all, the 3 dots, the 3 circles, are the dots on the 3 eyes in Christiania. Oh, okay. So that's where that came from initially. The red and the yellow, I'm not
they sort of reflect the royal colors, which is interesting. And somebody told us that's because they had some red and yellow paint. Which sounds like a Christiania kind of answer. But it's an oral culture with not a lot written down, and so you'll have these multiple stories. They're like legends, really. And you never really know which one is right, or if any of them are.
Yeah. Let's do like 2 more, so go right here.
Did you live with somebody in particular while you were staying there? And if so, what was it like being part of that community while you were there?
Christiania and research residents. Christensen Researcher in Residence program, and we stayed there twice through them. So they had, you know, a small apartment in one of
where the cannonballs.
Yeah. So we stayed there. We stayed with Nis a few times. One time we rented an apartment out in Copenhagen because we were there for a month. But being there, of course, was the best because then we had access. We could just get up at any time and mostly film ducks. You know, our hope was that we would be there when the violence happened or when, you know, something went down, and it never did when we were there. So all of that footage came from.
It always happened the week after we left. Big filmmaker who was there shooting absolutely everything, and that's where we got a lot of that police violence footage. That sort of thing.
But in the community, it was interesting. The first time we went there, we had to prove ourselves. And eventually people recognized us and they saw us working every day and out and filming, and so they appreciated that, and so they became very much more at ease with us being there. But we had to do that every time we went back, and we were there 4 times, so every time was starting all over again. It's like Groundhog's Day.
There's a lot of TV crews and stuff that would come through there and shoot something very short and sensational about hash and, you know, all that kind of stuff. And very superficial. So we did have to earn that a little bit, but I think over time.
Used to be the weed and the hash.
Oh, they just same old. That part has not been resolved. And it's just they're still dealing with it. There's moves within parts of the government to try to legalize cannabis there, but in the meantime, you know. And it's kind of mysterious, so like they don't always know, like, is it somebody in the government? Is it the police themselves that are deciding to do this? You know, but it's sort of, it never changes. Every 5 years, it's the same cycle, like Cornelius.
Government, and wouldn't that sort of spell the beginning of the end for them?
I mean, still working towards that, and it does normalize them. But you know, it's interesting because when you talked about fairly early into Christensen's history, when they eventually did make arrangements with the government for the electricity and the
that way.
And I said, look, you get home before I do leave.
The writer of it was a very spiritual person, and this idea came to him because up until 40 plus years ago, every mother who had a son, once that boy reached manhood, the military could just come in and reach and take him out and send him anywhere in the world. I mean, what we're living now is kind of a blessing because our kids aren't, once they reach manhood, they got to make their own decision. Well, the government could make the decision to take your son. And from 40 years ago all the way back to the beginning of history, boys, when they reached manhood, service in the military was considered, well, that's where you're going.
Cool. You guys have any?
And it just shows you how many people were all totally involved.
And the days were like 12 hours long.
But there were, I mean, you have hundreds of people that were there.
We had about 100 people. And of course, when you have horses and people, and horses with riders with swords riding through, it's it gets to be a little hairy sometimes.
Let's start here.
Yeah. Oh, take it out one.
Hey, how's it going?
Oh,
Yeah. See, this is how it was going.
Perfect. There you go. Ready? Oh, here.
Give him a hand.
If you guys are ready.
Brain set.
I know. We do this to
You want it?
What's up, dude?
Remind
yeah, come on in, man. Come on in for the slap. Slap.
I'm thinking about this row here on my.
You sit anywhere you want, man.
I'm just going to introduce our host, Emmett Montgomery, and
Emmett. Let's celebrate Wendy really quick. To the 11th Stiff Awards. That's,
yeah.
I'm excited about this. We're gonna have a wonderful time. What I think is great, I'm here in awards for a film festival, and about a fourth of you are filming me right now. So just relax. We're going to create memories in here and in here as well. Fantastic. Let's start off by who here is a filmmaker who had a film in this year's film. Who is this award ceremony is. Do you have a question? It's fun. We're going to show some films. We're going to be nice and respectful during that. Some people are going to win at the top floor of Pacific Place where I just sat. I don't know if anyone was there. This is Emma Montgomery. I am kind of a big deal. You're a big deal. I'm a celebrated stand-up comedian and storyteller. A lot of people really enjoy me. And
I enjoy you.
Thank you so much, sir. And what I am excited about by this festival and what I have seen over the decade is all the different types of storytelling that happen here, and that is what we're here to celebrate. And in fact, as the world changes and new stories happen and new options and ways.
I think Emmett uses the word adult very usely in that.
Yeah, very.
So let's be fair, okay?
Well, we're definitely old enough to drink alcohol, but that's pretty much it.
That's our maturity level.
Yeah, I had a ton of fun this year. This has really been, for whatever reason, the most fun year I've ever had. I love hanging out here in the U District. The theaters we have were all like really amazing.
The gallery.
Yeah, the gallery space was so great, having a space to kind of hang out, headquarters, all that stuff. Hopefully most of you had a chance to try out the DigiPin Game Gallery, the Oculus Rift. A few months. We've always been, just kind of a once-a-year festival. This last year, we kind of experimented with doing off-season like panels and educational program, and we've decided to launch several new mini festivals throughout the year. So, like, if you made it to Cartoons and Bloody Marys this morning, we had a really good time. Along with your ticket, you get a nice Bloody Mary, and we saw some animated films that are mostly made for adults. That's going to be like its own festival, so keep an eye out for that. Into Penetration.
Yeah. Also going to be its own festival unto itself, so start creating really sick and twisted films now. I mean, we're basically going to parcel out a bunch of different festivals throughout the year so that we can become more of a year-round presence as opposed to oh my god, it's Stiff time, and I think that happens with a lot of us. It happens to me, and so it's I think we feel important about or feel it is important to actually get Stiff as a year-round presence on your minds. We want to stamp the forehead of your consciousness with Stiff all year round. And that's what we plan to do.
Cool deal, but we've grown to the point where we had to actually write it down.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we have. I'll read the first part, and you can read the second part, maybe. So first, we have these two really incredible fans that, ever since before I started coming to Stiff, they've been coming to Stiff. They buy the passes every year. They come to films every single day. Bill and Lisa Kuhn. We really don't have time to go through all of them, but some of our key volunteers that came and worked in the theaters. And so Wendy Gonzalez, who she Lee Dancy, he's our audio tech guy, and he's probably working on the gallery, so we have a sound system. Mark Carr, he was the tour guide for the Oculus Rift. Worthington, Alex Willis, Arlene DeCarowe, Dylan Hopper,
Jessica Z, she's been shooting all of our stuff. We appreciate it. Matt Harrison. Naratha, we had an intern contact us this year from Bali in town going to school. And so, yeah, he came and worked on it and did some office work for us. Michelle Locke, Phil, Amarex, Susan Johnson.
Stiff, and I love the heart and the spirit and the soul of this festival. And I'd like to dedicate this award to all the men and women, and especially children in Bahrain who are still in prison, have been tortured, have been killed, lost family members, fighting for their freedom, for their democracy, and for basic human rights. And I just thank Stiff so much for giving me the opportunity to have their stories be told. So, thank you.
And where can we see this film?
The next screening in Seattle will be at the end of August at the Seattle Arab Fest, and there'll be other screenings. It just premiered. WitnessBahrain.com is the website, and if folks want to get on screenings, then contact me afterwards, and we'll make that happen.
And now let's watch the trailer. So thank you so much.
It's been a long haul, and people seem to like the film, which, you know, after 8 years, you're like, what are we doing? But, you know, it seems to be getting a good audience, so we're very happy. Thank you.
It was actually a documentary that kind of cemented my relationship with Steph. Clint Berquist, one of the guys who started the festival, did a film called the Seattle Comedy Documentary about a comedy collective. That seeing that film and that hate to it, and it's really beautiful. And so,
Then I can take my glasses off. Is that what you're saying?